How's the sound? Testing 1, 2, 3. Thank you. How's it going, CNC maker? Just trying to get something set up in the background here. Apparently I need to zoom out. That would make things smarter. There we go. And I need to find some steppers. What do we got here? That's cool. Is it a carbon laser? Hey Jay James, how's it going? Right now I'm getting set up to try and troubleshoot an issue for someone when we start today. They posted it up on Discord for those that are wondering where or how to do that. I changed around the lighting so it might be a little reflective. I'm still working on a way to tone it down a little. But we'll start in about 3.5 minutes. I think I've got almost everything set. Move this over. Close all these down. Open a new one. Downloads. Check on the chat. What's a blue laser? Does that have to do with the color? Yeah, today someone had a Q&A question about their configuration. Unfortunately, I don't have large steppers for TMC 2209s, but we're going to try their configuration and see what's going on. It may have stuff in it that I'm not aware of, but we'll see. It may be an example configuration for something, and we'll sort that out. But we'll just try it first, then we'll do a comparison. So I'm going to have to create a comparison folder, which would make sense. There we go. See, that's set. That I don't need right now. Good. Okay, it's getting pretty close to startup time. Yeah, I'm thinking about doing tutorials on lasers, but unfortunately I have to go over the safety precautions a little bit, so I'm trying to avoid the subject for the moment. I might do a router as soon as I buy a house, but that's a ways off. Currently our housing market's gotten a little crazy. So what's going on with the Delta that's strange? Mind you, I haven't hooked up my Delta yet, so it's going to be a little different for me to troubleshoot. Here we go. Okay. Today someone had a question on Discord. I'll show you it real quick. Let me just make sure everything's lined up here. I just have to move it over. So inside one of the chats, someone left a message on the TFT, and I'll show you what that looks like. So basically they're asking, does anybody have all bad connection and bad response on TMC 2209s? I'm using an SKR Pro board. So I set up an SKR Pro board and I downloaded their configuration, which is up here. You can try it yourself. I don't have large steppers, obviously, but he also showed the configuration and the jumpers. So we have an idea of what his configuration looks like. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give it a try. So first things first, we're just gonna do the first stepper and see what happens. So if you've seen the tutorial before, I usually go over and look up the configuration, but I pretty much know it. So we gotta set UART, and then I'm using a different stepper, so this might be a variable in this problem, but we don't know yet. And I'll hook up this, and I'll also do the power real quick. Now I can see that his power is set, which looks correct, so let me just drop these in real quick. And I'll check on the chat in a second. It's just obviously working with this, it's a little bit of fun. Let me find my screwdriver. So if you haven't noticed, for safety I marked the tops for red being voltage. That way I know what I'm connecting. Now obviously I'm not directly over the board when I'm doing it, so that's one of the reasons I do it. But you can also check the pinout diagram to see where they're supposed to go. Hopefully my hand's not covering it totally. So that's set. So one stepper, we're gonna have to pop out this and put it in the drive over here, and then check to make sure we're set for non-USB, because the steppers will be affected by that. And we'll plug this in, and I'll take a quick peek at his setup, and it looks like he's set correctly there. So what we're going to do is go over to VS Code in just a second, but first I want to take you over to what he's working with. So in here, I downloaded the two files. I'm going to extract this real quick, and then we're going to drop those files into the compare folder for rconfig.h and config advanced, just in case there's differences, so we don't have to do it a second time. And while this is unzipping or extracting, I'll check on the chat. Of course, I've got to get my mouse to move right. There we go. So it's kind of quiet so far, but that's okay. So as soon as this is extracted, we're going to pull out two files and put them in compare. And then we'll rename these later on when we pull them back out of Marlin. So I'm going to go into Marlin, second folder. I'm going to grab compare. I'm going to cut these. I'll go back up to downloads, go to compare, and paste them. Then I'll go back to download. I'll grab these two files. I'll copy them, or actually, yeah, I'll copy them for now. And I'll go back into here and paste them. Now I'm not sure which version he's working with, so I'm going to go to version, and my version is 2.0.8.1, so that might be a variable in this problem, but we'll find that out later. So what we're going to do is just open up VS Code. So we're going to click on Explorer, Open Folder, Downloads, Marlin 2.0, Marlin 2.0, then select folder. So the structure is different if you haven't noticed. They recently released a new version, so they changed a lot of the architecture of how the folder structure looks. So they give you this screen just to show you that these are pointing to this folder over here. But let's go in and check on his configuration real quick. So we'll go to config.h. We'll search on first motherboard. We're using the same version motherboard, that's good. He's got -1 set up here. We'll search on the steppers, which is A4988. He's got TMC for X and Y, that's good. And he's also using it for a second X, but we don't see that at the moment, and that's fine. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna go over to config advanced and see what he's got set. So one telltale sign right now that this might not be a file for the normal configuration is that it says Creality Ender 3 and it gives a version. This might be an example file he pulled, so there may be some interesting things going on here. So first we're going to search on 800, and we can see that he set up the 750. I've done that in a tutorial, so that's very similar. So we'll search on TMC debug to see if it's on. Okay, that one's not on, so we'll leave it alone for now. And we'll go and see if the other one's on. It is. So now we'll go back up and we'll search on sensorless homing. And he's got sensorless homing active. And he's got it set to 200. My normal sensitivity that I set is usually about 125. So that might be a factor right there, but it looks like he used it in the other one, but because it's a large stepper, it may be different. And also X2 looks like something that was added. So we'll check that in just a second. So those are the settings that I see right away. Let me check on what the chat's saying here. I'm using a BTT SKR 1.4 Turbo and BTT TFT and TMC 2209, and it's all working, but in some cases during the print that worked once, some of the time the print just stops and I see blank output on the TFT screen. Just out of curiosity, what's your jumper setting for USB versus direct power? That's the first thing I would check on that. Then your jumper settings for your actual setup. Some steppers don't come with configuration for UART or SPI mode. That's true too. Yeah, consult the data sheet is what CNC Maker's saying. But it also depends on the manufacturer. So Big Tree Tech has started to become very reliable with their steppers. Initially when I got them when they first came out, they were a nightmare. But do not solder if you don't have to. He's got this set to a 24 volt power supply for chopping. I'm using a 12 volt, so I can swap my power supply to actually test that. So let's give that a try too. So let me grab a power supply real quick that's 24 volts. Hopefully we don't spark the board. It's going to take me a second to actually change this. So I'll show you what I'm doing in just 2 seconds. So on the workbench, I've got a 24 volt power supply, but I don't have the second cable attached yet, so I've got to do that real quick. So essentially what I've got to do is add another one right here. So unfortunately I don't have a lot of real estate to show you what I'm doing, but I'm doing voltage and ground and tightening them down, and then I'm going to change out the cables on the other one. But I've got to make sure I do this right, so I got to take my time. So it's going to take a couple of seconds for me to make sure I'm doing it right. Okay, that's done. So this is what it looks like underneath, and then there's voltage, which is plus in this case, and minus. So that's ground and voltage. So what I'm going to do is unattach the other one, and that way we can actually use this configuration hopefully. Now this might cause the board to spark, but I doubt it. But we'll see. Last time I used 24 volts, I had a bad experience on the GTR, so let's hope it's not going to happen again. Okay, so first cable. Oh, I got to swap another cable actually, because I have ferrule connectors on that. So let me pop that one out and see if I've got another one on hand. Otherwise I'm going to have to take apart another board. So let's see, I do have a cable. It's a very long cable. So give me a second to get this undone. And install it real quick, or somewhat quick. So I'm sliding it back in and just changing the cables out. There we go. And I gotta double check my work. Okay. So power supply is set. Now I need to actually run the wires to it. So these might not be as elastic as the other ones. And I only have one of these boards, so if it blows, we're gonna have to go to a SKR 1.4, but I'll change power supplies if that happens. Okay, that looks good. Let me just verify everything again. Lock that down, find the power cord, place this off to the side, and let's see if it compiles now. And I'll check on the chat just before I upload this, because I know someone will be like, wait, watch. Let's see. Okay, well, I'm gonna do the compile real quick here. So in order to compile, it's slightly different. We've got to change this right here, but we don't know what the board type is because the INIs have changed. I actually know where it is, but I'll show you a way to find it. So if you go to source board, or excuse me, source core boards, and you search on SKR Pro, you'll see over here where it says STM32F4. So what you do is you go over to the INI, you look for STM32F4, and then you search on SKR Pro. Then you'll copy that, and essentially what's happening is these are links to these folders over in here for all the INIs. So that it's essentially still one file, but it's being connected during compile time. So we're going to paste this here, and then we're going to do a clean, and let's see if we can do Marlin auto build. So it's now updated to what we want to work with. It's downloading and unpacking stuff, I guess. So let's see what happened. That's interesting, but let's give it a try. So it's starting to build. If it fails the first time, build the second time. Unfortunately, I don't think the USB flash drive works very well, but it might mean that it's putting it on a USB and flashing. I'd have to try it to see. So it did fail, so let's try again. What's happening is it's probably building something out of order, or there's actually an error in it. Obviously, I'm not familiar with this particular file, so we'll see what happens. Okay, so let's go to the very first error and see what's going on. So your configuration.h file is an older version of Marlin. Downgrade. So what that probably means is it's like 2.7 or 2.8, because 2.81 just came out. So what we got to do is this. I'm going to have to close out of here and fix that problem. So let's close the folder, minimize. Let me make sure you can see what I'm doing. There we go. And so I'm going to go back up here. I'm actually going to delete this for the moment. And I'm going to delete this for the moment. And we're going to whack these because they're not of any consequence at this second. So on my desktop, I keep a backup of old ones. So we'll see if this works. So desktop, Marlin releases. So let's try the 7.2. So we're going to just copy that, go back to downloads, paste it here. Otherwise, he might be running an older version or one in between. And then I'll have to search my recycling bin for the one I just chucked. So I'm going to go in here. I'm going to copy out the Marlin config files and place them in here. Then I'm going to go back to the download. Copy these again. Go back in and paste them. And then we'll go back over to VS Code. We'll do this all over again. So this might be easier to compile this time. So we'll go to downloads, Marlin, select folder. So in this case, it's just the INI. So we have to find it. So we're going to search on SKR Pro. Copy the default environment, go back up to the top, and we'll see if it compiles. Otherwise, I have to ask him what version he's using. So we'll do a clean first, and then we'll do a build. And hopefully it won't fail this time. So I'll check on the chat now and see what's going on. Okay, it failed again. So let's do a second compile. Looks like it's doing better. So he might be working with this version. Unfortunately, without his version, I don't know. Oh. So let's see what we got here. X slave address not declared within scope is flash address. So let's see if we can go fix it. So this is probably a sanity check because it says sanity check. And it says something about invalid TMC address for X. So the second X that he added possibly could be causing an issue. So let's see if we can figure out what the configuration is. So we're going to have to close out of here again. This time we're going to go over to the desktop. And what we need to do is, in the compare, we need to rename these to, we'll say 207 underscore, I think it's 2, it might be 1, but we'll copy that piece. And we'll do the same over here. Go back to downloads. Copy these two. Go back to compare. And paste them. So we're going to grab this one and this one and do a compare real quick. So a diff. And we'll start to see differences. So there is something going on with the version number. This is the regular configuration he's using, so it might be even older, or actually it's 2.8. So now we know how to find the version number. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to scan through here real quick and then we'll try the other one, but it's probably going to fail one more time. So our version obviously is not set up right. His version has a difference in the actual baud rate. Yeah, that's what I was talking about up here. The version number is 40 in this case. So it says 020008. So I think it's 2.8 is what he's working with. But that's just a guess. He's using 2 extruders. And then there's going to be some weird stuff around the actual steppers. So there's also some stuff going on with the actual thermistor types. And then temperatures run slightly different. Cold extrusion seems okay. He's got it. Let's see. No, he's got it disabled, which this one should be, unless I'm misreading it. And then there's some, yeah. So right here, let's look at X2 exists. So he does have them, so it must be something with the versioning. Or it looks like it's something with the versioning. Obviously he's doubled this, so maybe a stepper's off on the advanced configuration. So let's close out of here and go back over and reopen it. Well, actually I gotta get the 8.0 version, which I don't have anymore. So let's see if we can try that out. So if we go to Marlin, and then we go to downloads, we'll go over to view downloads, and this might take me a second. So I'm gonna have to see if I can go back to the tag branch, which would be this one. And then I've got to find the actual build, because it's just config. So they may have hidden it. So let's see, branches. And it won't let me see it. So let's see, issues, pull requests, branches. Now I'm obviously going in a circle. Good times. Let's see what we got here. That's just going to pull what's right here. But I'm interested in the actual download, so it's probably over here. Of course, I forget these things. So let's see. View all branches. Well, they really don't want you to find it. As you can see, there was a change. Stale all branches. But you can see the changes that occurred. So I do have the file, but I gotta go hunt for it. So let's do that. So I'm gonna go over to my desktop and try and pull this back. Actually, desktop. Pull this over, click over here, and it was within the last couple of days. So let's see, today's the 17th, so it was about a week and a half old. So I'm guessing, let's find Marlin in here. Obviously I've got a lot of them. So 4/17 is too early. 16 was the day before, so it's probably this one. So I'm going to try and restore that and see what it looks like. So let's go to downloads. Click over here. Click the version. and we found it. So I'm gonna make a copy of this real quick and put it on my desktop so I can save it, because I already did save it. That's awesome. Anywho, let's go back to downloads. We'll grab his two files after we clean this up. Oop, doing this backwards, sorry. So let's grab these, put them in here, go back here, copy these, and put them back in here. And I know the sound is probably not good, sorry about that. Let me clean that up in 2 seconds. Let me bring this back up and see what's going on. Okay, so let's try this again. Downloads folder, Marlin, select folder. So inside here, what we're gonna do is just set up the default environment, which, oh, this is me working on something else. This is not a default file, possibly. So it's only one thing that's changed because the config files are okay. So we have to go over and find the folder for the INI. And obviously I've got it all goofed up here. So it's right here, I think. SKR Pro. Copy that. Platform IO. Paste it here. Do a clean. And let's try build. That was a long route to get to one simple thing, and hopefully it doesn't fail. It is taking a long time to build though. But so far so good. That reminds me, I gotta copy the other one over. Whoop. So it failed again. So let's see what's going on. Sanity check. XY probe speed, feed rate. So let's see if we can go to it. So we're in Marlin config and it's using the sanity. And there may be something changed. So let's see what the sanity looks like for the other one real quick. Awesome. Huh. That's weird. That might be my fault. Let's extract that real quick. So apparently I stuck it inside a folder and then had a zip in there. So let's go back and fix that. So let's close the folder, go back over to the folder. It's starting to populate. There we go. So we'll copy this over downloads, delete this one, paste this one. Now they may have disabled something in sanity, in which case I'm going to have to ask for it. But let's go in here and fix it. That's not smart. Of course, I can't do a Control Z. So let's do it again. Okay, so in here, it's going to be slightly different. I'm going to go to Download, Marlin 2.0, and then we're good. Change this INI again. It's not in the buffer still, so it's right here. SKR Pro. Copy. Paste it here. Do a clean. And then do a build. And it probably will fail. In which case, I need to know what's happening with their particular build. Because obviously I'm missing something. But I could compare out the changes and see where the failure goes, but this might take an hour. Okay, so it's the sanity check. And it's probably right around in here. So let's go there. Let's see. XY probe speed is now XY probe feed rate. So let's just do a file compare and see what happened. So I'm going to copy this, go back over here, hopefully they're the same, and we'll search on that. Whoop. Let me rename these real quick. 208. Of course, that's not a very good 0. And paste the other 2. And so we're looking for something about XY feed rate. So the printer that he's working with is rather large. But I don't see the change in here. Here we go. Let's see, speed, feed rate. So it should be feed rate. So we're just going to change that for the moment. And then we're going to search on it in here. Hopefully I just didn't paste it. Okay. I think that's it. Oh. Huh, apparently I can't paste there. That's awesome. XY probe. So this might be a example file that is gone a little stale. So let's try this again. This is one of the reasons I say try and avoid example files, because it will change the amount of time that you take for troubleshooting. Obviously, I'm a little bit skilled in it, but obviously I also have issues. So, let's see if it's feed rate this time. Now it's something else. So, now we're going to look for what's going on with the sanity check here. And so, Z probe speed fast is now Z probe feed rate fast. So we're going to search this way. Just going to copy this and we'll see if we can change it, and it's going to change back to feed rate fast. And it's not letting me paste, so let's see if we can find it here. It's probably right here. So feed rate fast. At least you can tell that it's something that was carried forward. Let's see if there's anything else. So there's going to be a bunch of things here, obviously. There probably is like 15-20 things I got to fix. So I'm not sure I want to do this on stream because this will take forever. But essentially, I got to ask the person if they're using an example file and to do a file compare and figure out all their changes. Otherwise, I'll be doing this for the next 45 minutes. And not answering other questions, but now you can see why I don't like example files. It's not that they're bad, it's just they're stale. And somebody else is building them, and they're not maintained. So, let's see what we got here. So maybe we can, well, it's going to go to sanity again. So use requires let's see if we can get away with searching on it. Apparently it's not allowing me to do paste functionality there. So obviously I'm copying something wrong. Yeah, it's way too much sanity checking here. Use LCD manually, requires LCD bar. So where is that being used? Yeah, I can't find it. So essentially, this is what we can do to fix the problem. You can go through line by line and find the issues and then change them. Obviously, some of this functionality is not the same. There's additional functionality sitting in this one that I've never seen before, but it's probably there for a reason, and it's probably designed for a particular board. So let's go up and see what the motherboard looks like here. Actually, am I in the right file? Why is that not going all the way up? There we go. So you can tell also it gives away right here that it's an old file. And you can tell that the verbiage has changed a lot. So that's probably the author. They're doing something on an Ender 3. But it's easier just to build the Ender 3 from scratch. As you can see, there's probably some differences between the boards. It can actually function at this speed. That's the printer they're probably using, which means that it's probably stale. But I have to go through this with the person individually and show them how to do it. But essentially you're going to copy over all the changes that look the same and leave alone the ones that don't, and then fix the problems as you come across them. You can leave these at default. Doesn't really matter for max temp that much, because once you reach max temp it'll shut off. And this one's been tuned. Well, so much for that idea. Does anybody else have any other questions? I don't want to spend too much time on this. Okay. Well, let's go through it a little and just take a look. You can tell that this is the newer version. It has more functionality, so this came from an examples file, I'm guessing. You technically don't need to change that anymore. Obviously, this probably is correct. He's using a probe. So on the Z-axis, he's using a DRB 8825, which is probably wise because it's not being used. You don't need an expensive driver there unless you feel like doing it. And then you can use DRBs obviously on the extruders if you want. Looks like these are pretty close to what their values would be. The advanced file probably is at 32 for those. The speed has been turned up, it looks like. And the acceleration and everything else has been turned down. I'm not sure what that setting is, because it's usually this or something else being this. But it could be that this is what they're actually using, which makes sense. So there's a BL touch on this person's configuration of some type, or it's a capacitive sensor. But let's see if BL touch pops up here. See if we can search on it. Nope, not using a BL touch. Sorry about that. There is some kind of sensor going on, I think. These are because the steppers are the actual opposite of normal steppers, so that's why he's inverting. And he's inverting for his first extruder, but his second extruder he's not, which maybe the plugs reverse. But he's using the same type of stepper for DRB 8825, so these would either both be true or both be false. But he could have taken a DuPont connector and swapped it or turned it 180 degrees and achieved the same result. Bed size is bigger than a normal Ender 3. Ender 3s are normally 220 or 235, I think, for millimeters. So this might be like a Ender 5. That's a guess. So the printers are also different, possibly. It doesn't look like he's doing filament runout. He is doing some kind of leveling. I just don't know what he's using for it. It might be a capacitive or inductive sensor, or it could be an end stop. And this isn't really much information because the settings are the same, but the naming and documentation is slightly different. This is for bed leveling still probably, but it says bilinear. And I think he's using bilinear. That makes sense. Then obviously this is newer. So it's talking about something different. This is an offset probably for a margin, but he's also using a delta. So I'm confused as to which printer type he's using, because it says delta in one place, Ender 3 in another place, and then it looks like the size of a Ender 5. So it's probably a delta, but if it were a delta, if you go up here, you'd see for the TMC 2208s, let me just get to it. You'd see all of these being the same for these three. So that would tell you it's a delta. So it's probably not a delta. So I don't know how much I picked out of this file that makes sense to people, but essentially I don't know which printer it is. I'm guessing it's either an extremely large printer like an Ender 5, or it's a Ender 3 that's not configured to the right bed size, and it's got some kind of probing for the Z-axis. He might also, well, no, he's probably not using a NeoPixel because this is added later. So let's take a look at the other one and see what that looks like. So if we go over here and we do a diff on this, it's got this here saying that it's probably an example of some type, but it says Creality Ender 3. The versions match at least. There's just this is probably from 2.7.2, and they just updated it but never changed the settings. So just a lot of differences, possibly with the structure of the file. These are additions. That looks like it's just a slight naming change. They added more fan pins for chambers, so this version is way out of date. And obviously that's just minor changes. This has been enabled to be used, but I don't see, well, it's probably only 2 you can use on that. That's probably why I'm confused. Looks like they enabled quick homing. BL Touch. So I'm confused if he's using a BL Touch or not, or if that's the example file. And you can see it's Delta bots versus Delta. Obviously I don't know the function off the top of my head, but I'm guessing it's some kind of alignment. This functionality looks like it was deprecated or moved. That functionality is new. Obviously the naming has changed. This was changed. This is where he's doubling it, but it could be that he's also doing it in the stepper. So I have to search for 800 to get there because I don't remember the name of it off the top of my head. That's something for a print head, I guess. No, it's a display, pardon me. That's been deprecated, I guess. Yeah, so the easiest thing for me to have him do is recreate in the current version of Marlin and then post those, because the example files are probably confusing. And the functionality is drastically changed for what you see for configuration. So I guess he's using, well, we're using a variable for microsteps up here, and they're not using it here. So it might be set uniformly. That's just a change in the way they made it, but he made the change for 32 right here. So is there something on the Z-axis? The Z is not actually being used in this case because it's the DRV 8825. So it's very similar to what you'd be using, but it's not. Chopper, he's setting it for the voltage he's working with. He's using hybrid threshold, which might cause other issues initially. Usually I save this to later when I work on it. So the trick is set everything up, make sure it works, then change one setting and try stuff. If you try stuff that's not one setting, and you change multiple things, you're not going to know what changed. So it's a good practice. Another way to do it is source control your changes or put them in separate folders of what you've done. That way you can roll back to a previous good configuration. This obviously should be 125, I think, but his stepper is different. It's a Lurge TMC 2209, which I don't have. So essentially I got to find out if it's an example. But we're an hour into this. Does anybody have any questions, or you just want me to babble about this file for a little bit longer? At least you can see where the new functionality has been added. So one thing I can do is I can send him an example config just to try that, but I don't know what the rest of his config is. So it's going to be confusing for me, not being able to see the configuration. I'm guessing that was removed. Not even sure what that is, but that's okay. Interesting. Never seen this functionality before. I guess it's new. May have to play with that. Okay, let's see. Hi Edward, I have a question. I have a do-it-yourself DLP 3D resin printer. At the heart of it, it's a BL Touch SKR version 1.3, and I'm trying to get it to communicate with the Creator Workshop software. Do you know how? The purpose of sanity. Oh, let me answer the second question first. J. Janes, the purpose of sanity check is a precompiled check for settings being set correctly. If something pops in sanity, that's saying where the error is probably occurring. So then you can trace it back by name. So like if I'm in here and I see an error where it says sanity check, I can go to that issue. I can copy like something here, and then I can go to configuration.h and I can search on it in theory, and it'll bring up where the actual issue is. In this case, the reason that the sanity check is there is because someone probably renamed a variable, and that's why it's being tripped. So it's now this. And that's why you're having a sanity check issue. Okay, so back to Matt's question. I've not worked with that type of printer being a resin printer, but I'm assuming that everything is driven by G codes, and so you could probably set it up to work the way you think it works, but you're gonna have to check each movement as you set it, being inverting the X and the Y for direction, because they might change, but I'm not sure. I have to have a resin printer in front of me to actually figure out the problem. But essentially a resin printer works in the opposite direction, so it shoots a laser across a liquid surface and cures it, and then either goes up or down depending upon which way they want it to move. And the laser cures the actual resin for people that don't know. Essentially, you have to figure out which directions those are, and then emulate that by changing the settings in the actual firmware. So, for instance, if you say that you're going up in your normal resin configuration with your normal board, what you're going to do is you're going to go up here to the very top, and if it's going the wrong direction, you're going to search on invert, and it's not going to be this. These are end stops, but you can change the logic of your end stops. If it says triggered when it should be open, you can change it from a false to a true to a false, depending upon what you have. But down here, you can invert the direction that you travel with your actual motors, or you can flip the connectors if they're DuPont connectors. So that's one way to deal with the direction on your DLP 3D resin printer. Let's see, and I'm trying to get communication with Creator Workshop software. Do you know how to do that? I've never used Creator Workshop software, but I'm guessing that it's a resin printer software. So if we search on it real quick, we'll see what we get. So it's a free trial, so I'm not going to try it out right away, but we can go to the website and see what's going on. Apparently I have no clue what this is. Well, maybe I have the wrong thing here. Creation Workshop. Yeah, that's probably what you're talking about. So I guess if you download this, It looks like it's a resin printer, but I'm not sure. But you're gonna slice the object. It's probably gonna have a base. You're probably gonna grab the one for your operating system and then set it up to slice in the way that it slices, and that'll give the directions to your actual printer on how to work with it. So essentially it's the same thing as Cura or Slicer. It's just working for the movement of the printer that you're using, and it's driving it via G-codes. Let's see. Oops, I thought I entered this. I have to jump direct power, not USB. Oh, your jumper is not on direct power is what you're saying. Yeah, if you have your jumper on USB and not direct power when you're making movements, the printer gets very weird. I experienced this like 4 or 5 months ago when I was actually putting a whole printer together, and then I realized that I obviously made a mistake. So remember to have your jumper on direct power and you'll avoid that issue when you're doing stepping. The reason that I actually move it to USB power is more to show the LCDs or other things and how they work. It's just a low power way in case I do something accidental, I don't blow the board. And it's a good way to test other functionality except for steppers. Also, when I turn on the printer, it shows up as my G drive, and I can easily move software to be installed, but I cannot connect via the COM port in anything I have on the printer, our printer face, repetier, slicer, etc. Okay, so what you can do in that case, I'll plug in a board and show you what's going on. So right now I have printer face up. I'll bring you over to the desktop for a second, or actually I bring them both up. Let me just bring on the camera. So this is what I do. I plug this in. Obviously it says COM port 1 right now, and I plug it in and it doesn't work because I'm not on power. So I'm going to move this over to USB power and plug it back in. And this is one of the reasons I move it to test. So obviously I don't know what the COM port is. It may be 17, but I'm doubting it's 17. So let's click on that. I was lucky and it came up as 17 and detected it, but the way that I normally do it is this. I go over to the desktop, I type in device manager. When I bring up device manager, because this is a desktop computer, I know that COM port 1 is a physical COM port, and then I know the second one right here, which is the only other device that's connected that'll show up in this part, is enumerated as 17. There are other things that you might see, but that's usually on the SKR. You can see a drive, but in this case I can't see it very well on this particular configuration. But that's how you find your COM port, and then you can just plug it in up here. Default speed is 250,000 bits per second. So does that help you find your COM port, J. Janes? Okay, does anybody have any other questions, comments, concerns? For those that are leaving, what is it, super chats, thanks for that. I may have missed it while I was talking. And also the people that do the PayPal, that's great. For those that don't know, I have probably a dozen tutorials now up on Patreon, so you can check those out before I actually release them. Some of them will jump directly to YouTube because there was an issue with the SKR2 that I'm trying to address. So there might be a lot of videos coming out in the next couple days on the SKR2. So you have a COM port now? Are you able to connect to it? Also, if you have a program like Cura open, it likes to grab it. So it's just hung when it's trying to connect Janes. So if it's saying nothing more in connecting, what you can do is, what applications do you have open? What I would do is I'd close down all the applications you're using or reboot, and then open up Pronterface and work through there and see if it connects. But if it's another software that I haven't used, I can't exactly guesstimate the problem. I know that Cura likes to grab the COM port whenever it connects to the machine. Okay, so the other thing you can do is you can actually try it out in VS Code. Let me see if you can see what I'm doing. In VS Code, you can do this down here, and this will allow you to connect to the actual port when I'm not connected to it. So let me disconnect. Let's try this again. So there you go. So I believe it's connected right now, but if that doesn't work, you can always do something like TerraTerm. Let me see if I can pull this up. This is going really archaic for a lot of people that haven't seen it. So you're going to go to serial port. You might see it in here. You can go OK. But right now the port's in use, so I'm going to close this. And I'll try this again. If I can get it to actually let me click. So now I'm connected. It might not look pretty. So there's a echo that's not set up on this, but it just reported when I did an M119 what the status is. So the sizing might be off too. Let's try that again. But it's a setting up in here for the actual configuration that I need to set. It's probably going to take longer for me to show you it, but there's settings for actually the view. Let's see. Echo local. There's not much to echo in here, but now you can see the actual command going in. But it's going to take me a while to play with this, and I'm kind of quasi-embarrassed working with TerraTerm live. I usually have to do that by myself. Okay, so if no one's got any more questions, I'm going to cut it short tonight so I can get some tutorials pumped out. So you might see tutorials popping out tonight or tomorrow on the SKR version 2. I don't know if you're into that board, but I'm just trying to get a couple out there so people know about it. So I'll keep saying over and over that there's an error in Rev A, and Rev B does work. And if you order a Rev A or you get a Rev A, you can always contact Big Tree Tech, and according to their policy, they'll replace it. Let me just show you that real quick. There is this issue. I just had to pull up the website real quick. It's in one of my files here, so I just have to get it in front of me. I don't want to show you the tutorials by accident, because yesterday, if you guys saw, there was a live stream that popped up. That was me actually not hitting the right button when I was recording tutorials. But down here, this talks about what Big Tree Tech can do to replace an SKR2 that has a bad board. So they'll do a full replacement for you according to what they're saying here, I believe. But I've already experienced this, and I've got to return my board. So I have one, I believe, that's on the way, but if it's not, I'll have to act quick. So if you have a Rev A board, don't use steppers. just return the board and save yourself the headache. Otherwise, you might smoke a stepper like I did. But we're winding down here today. I got to get some work done. So everyone, take care, be safe. Remember to get vaccinated if you can, and wear a mask if it's still going on. So take care. I'll talk to you later.